All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the Bundy Ranch situation. I know I've been silent on this in my videos, but I've been very vocal on the live chats and gotten into some heated discussions with some of my counterparts in support of Mr. Bundy. I want to try to share Mr. Bundy's point of view in a sense to kind of put you in his shoes, because a lot of people are looking at this and go, you know, legally he's got no recourse, he's got no stand from the legal point of view. So let's go back and start from where he started from and kind of go forward and see what's happened to him over the years to kind of understand his perspective, because a lot of people aren't even trying to do that. They have difficulty in trying to envision what's going on with this guy, and that's why they don't understand him. Now, I come from a long line of cattle ranchers on both sides of my families, from the late 1800s till recently, you know, till my grandfather, he passed away about 7-8 years ago, but you know, he had a ranch up until he got to where he couldn't ranch it anymore. But in Mr. Bundy's case, his ancestors went in the 1880s to this place in Nevada, and you were given 160 acres typically as a homestead. Maybe they bought the land, whatever, I'm not quite sure. But you have your homestead and you have your small area. Now in Texas, 160 acres of land, you could keep a whole lot of cows on that. 160 acres in Texas would probably support 100 plus cattle. Okay. The problem being is there in Nevada, it's near Las Vegas. If any of you have ever seen any footage of what's around Las Vegas, you'll know it's a desert. Okay. That means you have the amount of acreage necessary to support cattle expand exponentially. Instead of it being an acre or 2 acres per cow, it suddenly becomes 20 to 30 to 40 acres to have these cows and be able to eat enough. Because once they eat it, it's not going to grow back for a while because it doesn't rain very often. Okay, so it takes a lot more land to support the cattle where Mr. Bundy lives. All right, so when they moved there, they were given these plots of land and they were told, okay, you can roam the desert with your cattle in free range. Okay, it won't be fenced in, you just free range it. Okay, so later on, they've been free ranging for years, and this was the understanding that this is how things operated. You free range the cattle, y'all move your cattle around, y'all work together to be friends, and you brand your cattle and all that, just like in the olden days here in Texas. So there came a point where, of course, the county started taxing your property out there, you know. So they set up taxes for ranchers to pretty much, ranchers had a homestead and they were taxed on their homestead so the county could make money. So, you know, the average rancher was taxed on 160 acres on his homestead. And I looked, and a person being taxed for 160 acres would pay about $1,100. Okay, so let's say you owned enough of your own land and fenced it in to raise 1,000 head of cattle in Nevada. All of a sudden, you would need not 160 acres, but something more like 100,000 acres. Okay, now all of a sudden, your property taxes exceed what you can make off cattle. Okay, do you understand what I'm saying? It's not profitable to own the land to raise the cattle in a desert in Nevada. But free ranging, it is profitable to do it, okay? You can make ends meet that way. So along comes the Bureau of Land Management in the late 40s, and they come in and they decide, as the government does, that hey, here's what we'll do. We'll charge them fees to graze their cattle on the government land that they've been doing for the past 70, 80 years. We're just going to start charging them fees. And we're going to make nice money off them. So that's what they did for a while. Okay, and the people out there, they paid the fees because really what choice do they have? But they paid that fee, but they made sure the fees weren't too high so that put people out of business because they wanted to make money. Then later on comes along changes in policy and stuff like that, and all of a sudden they decide that, hey, we want to run these cattlemen in this area out of business. And Mr. Bundy in about 92, 93 figured out that their plan was to raise the prices and cut off land from the number of cattle he could, you know, to shrink the land down and raise the prices and make it unprofitable for cattlemen in his area. Okay, he figured out, he did the math, sat down with a piece of pencil and paper, I guess, and said, wait, if we do what they're saying, we will not make enough money to survive and we'll go out of the cattle business. So what proof, Nathan, do you have of this? The proof I have is that every other cattleman, all 52 of them, went out of business. So Mr. Bundy was right. The federal government intentionally drove all the cattlemen in that area out of business. They changed the policy and changed the rules, and they drove them out of business. He chose to defy them and to keep on doing what he had been doing his entire life. And he said, you know what, you don't have the right to change the rules like this. You don't have the rights to put me out of business. You don't have the authority to really control and own this much land based on the Constitution. So I'm deciding that you really don't have the right to do this. This land really belongs to the state of Nevada. And that's been his argument in case after case. Well, he goes to federal court, and guess what the federal court does? They say, no, federal law supersedes state law, and you know, that's tough, Mr. Bundy. And he says, no, this isn't right, this isn't what America's all about, and I'm going to stand up for life, liberty, and the good old American cowboy and rancher. So this is where we're at now today. He's taking an ideological stance against the government, and they're taking a legal stance against him. So we're facing off with ideology versus the federal government's power, and he is contesting it. Okay, so we're at the point now where there's been a standoff, and his side actually forced the government out and back. And that's because mainly there were enough cameras there that the government didn't want to do what they normally do in that situation where they massacre the people who defied them. So the government's pulled back, and I have a prediction, and it's not me with a crystal ball here, but they're going to find a way to nail Bundy to the wall. And I'm not talking about fining him and taking his money. They're going to want to throw his butt in jail and take away his ranch and his house and his livelihood and everything. At this point, they want to find a way to take everything he has away from him and throw him in jail and make an example out of him because he stood up and won a battle against the government. And they can't have people winning battles against them because that would cause real problems with their power structure in being able to tell people and control people and do what they want to do. So, again, I'm just saying, if you look at Mr. Bundy's point of view, he really is being railroaded by the federal government and has been for years. And that's why he stopped playing by their rules and stepped out. Well, they don't really like that. And by the way, the reason he owes them $1 million is because the federal court was charging $200 per day per head of cattle on the land since '98 till now. So that's why he owes so much money in fines to the government. It's not grazing fees that he owes, it's fines for trespassing that he owes, that he says he shouldn't be paying for trespassing, or even paying the government for the grazing rights. If by his standards, the state of Nevada really should be in control of this Nevada land, and he should be paying them a grazing right if anyone is owed it. So that's his stance, and that's kind of my stance on the subject, and that's why so many people have come down to defend him, because he really is getting a hose job by the federal government. And we have been so conditioned by the federal government to sit down and take it. They go, hey, we wrote a law and that's what it says. Nobody ever stands up and says, is the law right? And if you don't believe me, there's been plenty of cases in the past where the federal government has hose job people over land and railroaded people out of what is owed to them and due to them, and has been using federal courts to enforce it. The internment of the Japanese. Every single Native American kicked off his land and stuck on a reservation. All the stuff that happened prior to the civil rights movement to the African Americans. You know, there are just time after time of the federal government, basically politicians passing rules that are unconstitutional so that they can profit and increase the government's power and increase the money and the lining of their own pockets, which, again, if you're looking at it now going, why are they actually rounding up the cattle? And there's a lot of people pointing at the fact that they've actually decided, some people who are getting paid off have decided they want to use the land for solar panel projects and stuff like that. I haven't actually, there's so much disinformation coming from both sides. And what you do is, when you don't like the message, you shove a bunch of BS in this side. And then you have a bunch of other people shoving conspiracy theories on the other side. And it takes away from the real truth of the issue. When you Google Bundy Ranch, it comes up with so much crap. You can't find the actual facts to the cases, the prices involved, why the government did this and why the government did this. All you hear is two different sides with a bunch of BS, which has almost nothing to do with the actual truth of what's going on there at the Bundy Ranch. So that's why I'm making this video, to kind of let y'all in on some of the history and some of the truth behind what's going on there, to get you away from the conspiracy theories and the the evil government and all this. This is just basically bureaucracy at work against the small businessmen, and that's the way it is. And he says, I'm not going to be put out of business. I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing. To heck with you. You don't really have the authority or the rights to do this. And they said, we do have the authority and the rights. So it's come down to a power struggle now. And he won one battle, but I don't think he's going to win any more after this. My prediction is they're going to develop a plan to go and take him down. And again, they have to make an example of him, so they're going to try to find a way to do it. So we're going to see what happens.